Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know it's the last talk of the day. I'm so excited to be here. My name's Kyle Boss, and I'm a web developer at Tinder. And I flew in, actually, this morning all the way from Los Angeles, because that's where our headquarters is. But I am no stranger to Kyiv. I actually came out here for Eurovision. An American in Eurovision, I know is kind of weird, but it was a lot of fun. Fell in love with Kyiv, fell in love with the hospitality and the Russian chocolates. Oh my God, those are so good. And actually, I just bought a whole bunch of chocolates downstairs. Literally like about $50 worth to bring home to my friends. Anyway, so thank you so much for having me. And also, I'm so excited to be talking here about JavaScript. Everyone at work, my family, they just can't shut me up about it. So I'm so happy to be able to give a talk about JavaScript. So when people think of Tinder, a lot of times they think of it as the mobile app. And we're not just any mobile app right now. We are the #1 lifestyle app in the App Store. And every time I look at this picture, it's really humbling because we're quite a small company. We haven't even reached 500 people yet. So it's always really humbling to see this. However, this is a web conference, a JavaScript conference. And we don't just have a mobile app. We are also a progressive web app. So instead of just swiping on your mobile device, downloading the app, you can actually swipe on Tinder.com too. You don't have to delete your photos to make space for us. You could just go into your browser and swipe there. Which also, by the way, opens up a whole realm of possibilities. You could swipe at home on your desktop. You could also swipe at work. And we don't judge that, totally fine. In fact, we encourage it. We give you a work mode button. So if you are finding the love of your life at work, you're multitasking, that's fine. We're web developers. We know multi-threading. Totally fine. Because if your boss comes behind you while you're finding the love of your life, bam, you can hit the work mode button, and you'll have all these Excel spreadsheets pop up, and they'll never know. Anyway, so why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because we are hiring like crazy for web developers. If the stuff in this talk you see are super exciting, feel free to apply. I'll give you my email at the end of the talk, okay? Also, we are looking for mobile developers, so if you're an app developer for iOS, Android, product developer, web designer, web developer, come talk to me, all right? All right, so let's get to the actual content of the talk, the meat and potatoes. So on my first day at work at Tinder, I've been there for about 1.5 years, and on my first day, my boss, Eric, pulled me aside. He was like, Kyle, come with me. I'm like, okay. I'm going to learn all of Tinder's deepest, darkest secrets, right? And he sat me down, and he said, Kyle, you're going to be working on a WordPress blog named Swipe Life. And instantly, I'm like, oh my God, a WordPress blog. I don't know PHP. I've never used WordPress. My interview last week was in React, and I think he saw this shock on my face. He was like, whoa, 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 Kyle, no. Yes, we're going to be working in WordPress. And we chose that very, very explicitly. We decided to use WordPress because our writers are going to be freelance writers. We have a few main writers that are in-house, but a lot of our writers are going to be freelancers. And for freelance writers, a lot of times they're working in WordPress. And so WordPress is made by writers for writers, and it empowers writers to get articles out efficiently and effectively. So we want to make sure we gave writers the best tools for them. So that's why we chose WordPress. However, for me as a developer, it just kind of sucks that I can't use React. I have to use PHP. One solution that we could have is calling WordPress's API. So yeah, WordPress does have a pretty robust API. So if you go to /posts, you'll see all of your posts in a JSON format. One interesting thing about that, though, is you now have to have 2 services up and running at all times. Both have to be sending out 200s. Also, if you make an API call to WordPress every time, that's going to add some latency, right? Or you have to add additional mechanisms for caching. This, by the way, if we do this, is called a headless CMS, which is totally fine. It's an existing paradigm, which basically says, hey, I'm going to use this content management system as just that, a content management system. It's where the writers can write. It's where they can edit. It does everything except for display the content. However, we could roll our own headless CMS, or we could use this tool called Gatsby. And so the rest of this talk is going to be about Gatsby. Gatsby is this kind of new tool on the block. It's been around for a couple of years now, And it's just at the tipping point where I think most developers have probably heard about it at least, if not used it by now. And what Gatsby is a static website generator. Now, static website generator for Gatsby is a little weird because Gatsby does so much more than just generate static websites. But at the end of the day, when you have a build, you will have a static website. So, and the most important thing for us at Swipe Life is Gatsby is going to act as that bridge between our React app and our WordPress app. So imagine two different services running at the same time, communicating to each other. Now, how do we use Gatsby? The rest of this, maybe 5 or 6 slides, I'm going to show you some configuration, how to install it. But obviously, you're going to have to do a little bit more than what I show you here. But the first thing you're going to have to do is install the package, the plugin. It's a Yarn or NPM package. You just use yarn global add Gatsby CLI. And once you have it on your computer, you can now run the very first command that most people use when they use Gatsby, is Gatsby new. Now, what Gatsby new does is it creates a brand new Gatsby project, but I like to just say it's a React app. It's a React app which is pre-configured with some extra packages, some NPM packages, as well as some Gatsby configuration files. And the most important Gatsby configuration file, it's called Gatsby config. So Gatsby config is where you're going to tell Gatsby, hey, these are all of the configurations for my Gatsby app and some plugins as well. What plugins are extensions of your Gatsby project. We're going to use a very important one, the most important one for us at Swipe Life, Gatsby source WordPress. So what Gatsby source WordPress does is it tells Gatsby, hey, you're going to be getting all of your information from WordPress. You're going to treat WordPress as your backend. And here inside the config, you're also going to say exactly what URL your WordPress instance is at. So at the end of the day, you're going to want a production build, a static website, and to get that, you run, well, first, by the way, you have to install the Gatsby source WordPress package, because these are all packages, and then you run Gatsby build. So Gatsby build is a big command. It does a lot of stuff, and it lets you know that it's doing a lot of stuff because it looks like, I don't know, code vomit on your terminal. If you're at a coffee shop, they're going to think you're hacking the internet because of all the stuff it's outputting on your terminal. So it does a lot of stuff, and the next few slides I'm going to describe what it's actually doing. So the first step is Gatsby is going to crawl your WordPress API. So your WordPress has an API, and it's going to call every single endpoint that it can. And yes, some APIs are going to 404, or they're going to 500, or access denied. But it's going to collect as much information that it can about your WordPress site, and it's going to stuff it all inside of a GraphQL service. Now, this GraphQL service is incredibly important because your React app is actually going to use that GraphQL service as a backend. It's going to use it to store all of the data. And whenever your React components need information from your GraphQL service, aka your WordPress, it's going to make GraphQL queries. Does that make sense? All right, cool. So let's take a look at what this post looks like. This post component is, for this purpose, a very simple component. And it's displaying a WordPress title and content. These field names, by the way, are given by WordPress. And they're passed in via the props, using the data object. Now, this data object is populated by a GraphQL query. This is the GraphQL query we're using for this one, except for the ID. We're kind of shoving it in there. But we're just querying a specific WordPress post and grabbing the title and content. You could grab more stuff. You could grab the author. You could grab metadata. But for this purpose, all we wanted was title and content. And so what Gatsby build does is it's going to execute every single GraphQL query that it can. It's going to execute them, grab those results, and pass the information to the props that need, to the components that need them via props. And also, one fun thing here is if you don't know GraphQL and you want to get into Gatsby, I think that's totally fine. I think Gatsby is a great kind of like gateway drug into using Gatsby, to using GraphQL, I mean, because GraphQL provides this graphical interface. Gatsby provides this graphical interface. And what graphical does is it allows you to test out your queries in real time, and it shows you the data structures. So here, I typed this in. I typed in query WordPress post, title, content, and it kind of auto-completes for me. And it says, oh, hey, here are the results you would get if you were to query that. And then also it gives you a bunch of possible data structures here as well. A bunch of things you could query upon. So what did we just do? Let's take a step back. What have we done so far in Gatsby build? Well, what Gatsby did was it traversed your WordPress API, made it basically a copy, put it inside of GraphQL, and your React app pulled the content from that GraphQL service and acted as a front end for your WordPress app. All without touching any PHP, we made a React front end. And that's kind of the power of Gatsby. That's what's really exciting for me, at least about Gatsby. Everyone else, I think, is excited about a lot of different things, but this part is what blew my mind. So it's not done yet, by the way. So yes, we do have a front end for Gatsby, but what it does next is what makes it the static website generator. You have a huge React app, and what Gatsby will do is it will chop it up into a bunch of small HTML and JavaScript files, and it will give you a static website. And at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want with it. I think most people would host it serverlessly using Amazon S3 or Google Cloud, for example, Netlify. But you have a static website. So back to Swipe Life. Our engineers, we worked for months on end trying to get these smart components up, getting our WordPress up to speed, and our writers were creating wonderful content. On October 1st, 2018, we went live with Swipe Life, and the dating community absolutely buzzed about it. There was so much chatter about the content because it was edgy. Sometimes so edgy, I'm like, oh my god, I don't want to open this at work, progressive. And it was also really geared towards the Generation Z community, the new generation. And we also have some, on top of written content, we have video content. So, for example, we've had J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez. She came in and helped out some of our Tinder users navigate the online dating life in a video. But one of my favorite videos is when two of our American celebrities, they're called Jonathan Van Ness and Antonio, they came in and helped our Tinder users navigate the online life. Take a look.
Do some makeup, but don't go over the top. Touch up your roots. Blow dry your hair instead of ironing them poker straight.
If a man ever had the nerve to turn me down based off of the volume or lack thereof in my hair, I wish he would.
Get some Spanx or shapewear that makes you look more shapely in pictures. Wear some heels, because even if it's a portrait where you're just seeing this much, when you wear heels, your weight goes on your toes and it kind of elongates your whole body, even for a close-up. Look straight into the camera. When somebody's looking at your picture, it gives a feeling that you're looking straight into someone's eyes.
Bad
The
dating
last one
advice.
was right. Everything else before that, like if you want a miserable relationship,
I
listen
felt
to what
attacked.
she said. No, that was outrageous.
That was a lot.
That was like Tinder in 1943. It's like, make sure your slippers are by the front door for him, and make sure you don't.
All right, so it was the dating community that was really buzzing about us. But it wasn't just the dating community, it was the tech community. TechCrunch has written several blogs about Swipe Life. And my favorite aspect about the Swipe Life tech is our Google Chrome audit. It's really silly. I feel like a dad showing pictures of like his firstborn son or something when I show people this. But our Google Chrome audit is basically like a report card of what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, where you can improve upon. And just like a report card, it's really difficult to get straight A's or all 100s in one day. Here's what we were looking like on October 1st, 2018. We got two 100s and two 98s, and we were also a progressive web app. Now, I'm really proud about this, and I mean, our engineers worked really hard to make sure we got a really high Google Chrome audit, well, to make sure our websites perform it more so. But the most important number for me is performance here, number 98. Why is that? For me, traditionally, getting a high-performance number is really tough. Yes, you can uglify your JavaScript. Yes, you can uglify your style sheets. But making sure your website lazy loads your images correctly, that's an art. Making sure that the right things are deferred, that's an art. So Gatsby gave us two tools out of the box that really helped us with our performance. And they're pretty innovative and pretty clever. And they're both plugins that it gives you right when you install with Gatsby New. The first one is called Gatsby Image. So what Gatsby Image does is it optimizes all of your images. It optimizes them for desktop, tablet, mobile, and then on runtime, it takes those images and it lazy loads them. It lazy loads them with a blur-in effect. I have a video of what it looks like here. Notice as we refresh and as we scroll, these images blur in. By the way, I slowed down the internet on this video so you can actually see this blur effect in full action. On fast Wi-Fi, you usually don't even notice. So Gatsby Image gives us that power. It really helps us with our time to interactive and our time to load, right? And how do you use it? Well, you switch out the image tag with another image tag with a capital I. Also, you need to tell Gatsby what optimizations you'd like to make. For example, are these images going to be flexible, or are they going to be fixed? What's the max width or the max height? And you do this via GraphQL queries. And you can learn more in the Gatsby documentation. It's not too difficult, but you do have to write GraphQL queries to do it. But once you write one or two, you get the hang of it, and it becomes second nature. So the second tool that Gatsby gives you is called Gatsby Link. And Gatsby Link is way easier to use, and I think it's even more innovative, because what Gatsby Link does is it looks at your user's cursor, on runtime, obviously, and when your user's cursor is moving throughout the website, as it is about to hit certain URLs, Gatsby prefetches the content the user will need if they were to click on that URL. So it prefetches the content. So by the time they actually click on that link, hopefully those fetches are already responded to, and the browser just has to render them, which is kind of cool. Here's what it looks like. I opened up the network tab here, and you can see as my cursor is hovering over URLs, more and more prefetched resources are being responded to. And also you can see some images here that are being fetched. That's thanks to Gatsby Image. What's funny now is that if you are on fast internet, literally the response time is just instant. It feels like the website's almost broken, that you have to add a little loader in there for half a second to make it feel normal. It feels like you're clicking on files on your desktop at this point. So how do you use Gatsby Link? Well, you just replace your anchor tag, the A tag, with a link tag. And instead of using href, use the prop 2. And that's it. That's the only change you need to make. It works for all relative URLs. OK? So I did want to point out one last thing. We are a progressive web app, which is really fun to think about how we got there. For those of you not familiar with progressive web apps, all they are it's this idea that websites are great and all, but there's some aspects of mobile applications that we'd like to have inside of websites. So, for example, if you use Gmail or Reddit or Tinder on the Tinder website, you will get notifications from your browser saying you got a new email or there's a new Reddit post that you subscribe to. These notifications are from progressive web apps because we decided, hey, websites should have notifications. Mobile apps have notifications, and those work out lovely. We should add them to the website world as well. And they're all based around service workers. So one cool aspect about progressive web apps is that there's usually an offline experience. If you think about it, apps, when you're offline, they don't just give you like on Chrome, you know how it gives you the little dinosaur? You could play the dinosaur game. On apps, they don't give you that experience. You get a personalized in-app experience saying, hey, you're offline. Can you please turn on your internet? For websites, for progressive web apps, you're allowed to have that offline experience too. So for example, I like Reddit as an example. If you're on Reddit and you're offline, it gives you an offline experience. Now, this means that's a progressive web app. And for us, at Swipe Life, what we ended up doing was instead of giving someone just the page that says, hey, you're offline, we were able to cache all of these responses. So if they went to the home page, we cached all the home page responses. If they went to an article about first dates, we cached that article too. And we also cached the prefetches. So if they are offline, you could actually still navigate through Swipe Life. So you can still navigate through Swipe Life, click on pages, click the back button, all while you're, I don't know, on a subway or on a plane, which I think is really cool. So how did we do that? Enough about progressive web apps. How did we get there? We added 2 lines of code. So we added first Gatsby plugin manifest, which is needed for your service workers for progressive web apps. And then we added Gatsby plugin offline. These are 2 plugins, again, NPM packages that you install with yarn add. And what's fun about Gatsby is it actually already comes with Gatsby plugin manifest installed, I believe. And a Gatsby plugin offline is commented out. You just have to uncomment it to use it. One weird thing, though, is that Gatsby plugin manifest has to come before Gatsby plugin offline. So if you run into any issues, make sure that your Gatsby plugin manifest is before Gatsby plugin offline in your plugins list. This, by the way, is from Gatsby config that we showed you earlier. All right? So, October 1st, 2018, we did go live, and we are still up and running. And we are going at about 2 to 3 articles a day, lots and lots of returning users, and we have a lot of cool content. So if you ever want to find out where to go on your first date, what to do if your first date's going really bad and you want to get out immediately, feel free to check out swipelife.tinder.com, our website that uses WordPress as a backend, but React as our front end. So we're a year now, and it's been going great. However, there's this one day in March that everything went totally wrong. And March, by the way, was right before the mid-year reviews. That's like when my boss tells me what I'm doing great at, what I'm doing bad at. And this happened right before that, so a little freaky. But I was looking at this news website, and what ended up happening was I was reading it just like normal. I think it was about earthquakes or something, because they always happen in California. And when I was reading this website, all of a sudden it turned into a succulent, like one of those plants that don't need water. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. This website obviously is hacked. I should get out of here. I went to a different website to read another news article. And as I was reading it also, it turned into a plant as well. TechCrunch, same thing. 9to5mac.com, same plant. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? I went to Twitter, and it looks like other people were having this problem as well. Kyle said, today's a big day for succulents. And then hashtag WordPress. And anyone who sees this plant who has used WordPress recently knows what's going on. This is the default theme for your WordPress sites when you set something up. And so everyone's website was reverted to the original theme. And here's what happened. WordPress was down, and it reverted everyone's website to the original theme that day. And I was freaked out, like, oh my God, what about Swipe Life? Is Swipe Life a succulent? This is what I saw. Swipe Life did not turn into a succulent. We survived the succulent apocalypse, as I call it, because it was a long day. It was like everyone was a succulent all day long. And why is that? Why did we survive? Well, it all kind of goes back to Gatsby. Here's what happened. Our WordPress was down. Our writers couldn't write. Our editors couldn't edit. Like, no more new content could be produced. And yeah, that really sucks. However, our front end was still up and running. People could still go to swipelife.tinder.com, even if they didn't go before and did that little progressive web app cache trick. Like, they could still actually see Swipe Life and read our content. And the reason for that is because all of our WordPress API calls were during build time, not during runtime. So during build time, we were so dependent on WordPress. But on runtime, we don't have any API calls. So our React app was fully independent, didn't need WordPress, and people could still read our content. Now, I sat down and wrote my boss and the rest of the team an email. And I said, hey, this is what's going on in the WordPress community. And we survived, and here's why. So that was a very good day. Now, I think Gatsby's been around for 2 years now. And whenever I talk to people about Gatsby, everyone's a little like, yes, it's going to solve a lot of issues, but also, is it production ready yet? Is it great for like big businesses like Tinder? And that's a very fair question. I did ask the team who decided to use Gatsby, what were some things that you wish you had have known before you chose Gatsby? Like, before you went on this Gatsby journey, what were some things you wish you would have known, would have planned for, that you just don't know when you go into the Gatsby production system? And I like to call these life pro tips, because I compiled them all, And actually, there are just 3 big ones. Everyone seemed to say the same things. And so hopefully, if you go back to your company or your job and say, hey, I want to use Gatsby, you know what you're getting yourself into, because there's some extra steps. The first one is long build times, which, by the way, are solvable. So mind you, when you start out with WordPress, if you make any edits, your build time is 0 minutes. Like, WordPress doesn't have a build time. Your edits are pretty instantaneous unless you have a cache or something. However, once you use Gatsby, immediately you get a 3-minute build. That's, I think, like the starting rate. And then eventually, as more blog posts come in, you get 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Eventually, us at Tinder, we got 3-hour build times. And that was just too much. Like, to fix a typo, we'd have to wait 3 hours. And that's at the time when we had 1,000 WordPress posts. But it really scaled linearly. So there are 3 things you can do to fix this. The first one is make sure you are on at least Gatsby 2.9. I think right now we're at Gatsby 2.18, as in 2.18 is the latest. But I would not go to the latest ever on Gatsby. I've pushed bugs to Gatsby. Everyone pushes bugs to Gatsby. Make sure you're on a stable version. It was Gatsby plugin analytics. One day I pushed a feature there, and the next day I found out what rest in peace inbox means. Everyone's analytics broke. So anyway, make sure that you don't go to the latest build, but also at least 2.15, because they started parallelizing them, parallelizing the builds. Before, it would generate your Gatsby static website and then your images. And then later on, they do the images and the HTML in parallel. So that cut down the build time a lot. And that started in 2.9, but 2.15 is incredibly faster. Second thing is Gatsby image takes a while. Gatsby image uses Sharp under the hood, the Sharp plugin, or sorry, the Sharp package. And the thing with Sharp is it's great. It optimizes your images. But the bigger the image is, the longer it's going to take to optimize. And so one day I saw in our WordPress, we had images that were 3 megabytes, 5 megabytes that we were optimizing every single time. And so what you want to do is make sure that you have a plugin inside of your WordPress that says, hey, automatically optimize the image when it's uploaded. Maybe set a max of 1,400 pixels in width, maybe a max of 1 megabyte, or even less. So WordPress images need to be optimized already, and that will make the build go faster. The last thing is that Gatsby is really kind in that it gives you a cache directory. It's called .cache, like one of those hidden directories. And you want to make sure that inside of your Circle CI or your Jenkins, that you're going to be bringing in that cache, because it tells Gatsby, hey, I already optimized all this. I already generated all these things. No need to do it again. Also, on that same token, every time you finish a build, make sure you resave that cache directory so the cache is hot. Anyway, so long build times. We used to have 3 hours build times. We got it down to 15 minutes using those 3 steps. Okay? The second thing is updating and rebuilding. A lot of people are curious, like, what does your build architecture look like? Well, we use AWS. So whenever there's a WordPress update, and by WordPress update I mean an update on a published post, a post being unpublished, or a post being published, if those 3 things happen, we're going to trigger a post request to our API gateway, which is connected to our code build. And our code build runs 3 commands. The first command is git pull to make sure it has our latest Gatsby code. The second is yarn, or yarn install, to make sure all of our node modules are up to date. And the third is Gatsby build, that big command that we ran at the beginning. And at the end, remember, you're going to get a static website. And so what we do is we push that static website up to S3. Now, a lot of people have been asking me, too, how does the S3 stuff work? So a little preview into that. I'm not going to talk about too much, but our S3 is connected to a CloudFront. So that's what allows us the ability to have HTTPS. And even cooler, something I'm super excited about is we dived into Lambda at Edge. So that really helped out with internationalization. We just released Swipe Life France 2 weeks ago. So anyway, the last thing, and I think this is the most important, oh my God, is there's no preview. You know that preview button in the top right-hand corner of your WordPress posts? That's gone. Because remember, Gatsby is using a React app totally separate from WordPress. And so your WordPress website doesn't really know where to go if you click on preview changes. So what can you do? We ended up rolling our own preview functionality, which took some time. And you want to make sure you do this, by the way. You want to make sure you provide a preview button, because if you don't, it's kind of equivalent to your writers debugging in production. You want to make sure that they know exactly what their article is going to look like before it goes live. So we rolled our own, and that took quite a bit. That took quite a bit of effort, ingenuity. And if you have any questions on how we did it, feel free to ask me via email. But it took a little bit of work. If you don't want to do that, though, I know Gatsby offers like a paid feature where they'll set up a preview for you. I'm not really quite sure how it works. We didn't use it, but just know that that's an option too. But in any case, you're going to want to have to build a preview. So those are the three things: long build time, no preview, and you're going to have to build a architecture around your building system. So whenever you're in the office, you're like doing story points or whatever that is, let them know, like, hey, these are some things that I'm going to have to do when building Gatsby, okay? So our time here is almost done. And thank you so much for coming, by the way. But I had one last personal story that I want to share with you guys, where Gatsby was kind of like the star of the show. It really saved the day. One day, we had a meeting, the marketing team, and they realized that there was something missing in the emoji Unicode set. Like, we're a company based off of love and a company based off of inclusion, and we realized one of the emojis were missing that. Take a look. So we realized, you know that hand-holding emoji? There were no interracial couple emojis. Everyone was the same skin tone, and we realized, oh my god, we have skin tones for every other emoji. How come this one was left out? And so we started this petition at change.org. It's just this generic petition website, and immediately people started signing. And it was really cool because it kind of validated this movement. It validated that people wanted this emoji. And so we decided to do something a little bit bigger, a little bit more personal, and a little bit more professional than a change.org website. We decided to make our own viral landing page. And in this viral landing page, we wanted to make sure that there were two technical capabilities that we could solve. First, we wanted to make sure that our development was incredibly fast, because nothing's worse than making a website for a targeted audience, and by the time that your product is released or that website's released, your targeted audience has already moved on. So we want to make sure that we could develop this for us in a 2 weeks or 3 weeks max. The second thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that it was extremely, extremely scalable. So the whole idea here is that viral websites a lot of times have 0 visitors for the longest time. Did MoviePass ever come out here, by the way? Is that a thing that was here in Ukraine? Oh, well, we had this website called MoviePass, and for the longest time it had zero visitors. Well, not 0, but very low level. And then one day, something beautiful happened. Everyone on Reddit was talking about it, and it got to the top page, and all of a sudden their website DDoSed. And the moment where they were supposed to be like, yes, this is my moment, everyone's coming, was actually the very moment when their website went down and no one could actually access it. So we want to make sure we were extremely scalable just in case we did go viral all in one day. All right? So we wanted to develop fast. How do we do that? Like, it's easy to just say develop fast. Do we hire more developers? Do we hire more engineers? No. We want to make sure that we are building our app in React, because we know and love React. As we said, we build a lot of our apps using JavaScript. So we want to make sure we use React. However, how do we make our site extremely scalable? Well, one of the cool things about static websites is you could go serverless. And for those of you unfamiliar with serverless, it's this huge buzzword that's going on right now. And it does not mean that there's no server. It just means you're not the one managing it. There's like these huge server hoarders like Amazon or Google, and they will allow you to use their servers, and oftentimes for a cheaper price. What they do is they know servers best. They're able to scale things up and scale things down automatically without any much configuration from you. And so also it's cost effective because if there's already all these servers that they're hosting, adding your small website is pennies. So scalable, going serverless, seems great. Why isn't everyone doing it? Well, in order to go serverless, you need to have a static website. And remember, we have Gatsby on our side. And Gatsby is a static website generator that lets you build your website in React, right? So we used Gatsby for this project, and within a couple of weeks, we already had the website going live. This is what it looked like. It was really simple, but it was something that we could point news organizations to. We could point CNN to. We could post on Reddit as well. And people strove to this website. And we now had a face to our brand, a face to our movement, and people were immediately talking about it. Loving these new Tinder ads, someone said. The New York Times had a full-page ad for the movement, and we came to know it as the Represent Lava movement. And it got so big that we even won a Webby Award. And this was really important to me. Like, by the way, how many people know of Webby? A few people. It's kind of like the Emmys for websites, if that makes sense. And the one thing is, on your acceptance speech, none of that like 3-minute long crap where the microphone goes down into the floor. You're only allowed 5 words. And ours were, thank you for swiping right. Anyway, so we won a Webby Award. And for months, people were still signing our petition. And even if it was just for a few months, everyone seemed aligned that this emoji was something that everyone wanted. And that was enough fulfillment, I think, for us as developers, as a company. But in March of this year, Unicode came out and said that the interracial couple emoji is now officially inducted into the emoji registry set. It's now an official Unicode character. And that was back in March. And whenever something new happens in the Unicode set, Apple, Google, they need a few months to actually design it and integrate it into their products, right? So we're really excited about this emoji project. And if you ever want to check out the campaign, feel free to go to our Gatsby website at emoji.tinder.com. And I want to add an addendum. Just this week, how many of you have an iPhone? Oh, it's really 50-50. An Android? Yeah, it's literally 50-50. Oh my god. So just this week, iOS came out with a new update, and on that update was the debut of the interracial couple emojis. So if you got the update, you now have those emojis. And Gatsby played a huge part in it. Our website never went down. Our website was built incredibly fast, just in time for the petition to keep gaining momentum. So that was a big special moment for us. So I wanted to leave everyone with this. Thank you so much for coming to the talk. Also, if this stuff does excite you, if you want to work on Gatsby or work on React or just work on Android, iOS, feel free to send me your resume, and we can see if we're a match. And also, by the way, my email is kyle.boss@gotinder.com. My Twitter is @KyleBoss. Feel free to slide into my DMs, And also, I wanted to leave everyone with this. Now, I did talk to a lot of companies regarding Gatsby, talking about, hey, what are the pros and cons? And what was really interesting is everyone seemed excited about the solutions that Gatsby was solving. These problems are really big. WordPress, everyone seems to really agree, is a powerhouse within writers, and engineers just want to keep using React. However, a lot of companies aren't quite ready yet to integrate Gatsby into their ecosystem. And I say ready, I don't mean like technologically ready. They just say, oh my gosh, I can't see ourselves jumping in right yet. Usually, and that makes sense, by the way, because companies, usually they're early adopters. They're not early adopters. They like to see a product have success for many years. So this is us at Tinder coming out of the woodworks and saying, hey, we used Gatsby on several highly visible projects, and we turned out okay. Our writers are able to continue using WordPress, and our engineers, we don't have to use PHP. We could use whatever we want. So if you too have a blog coming your way at your company or at your day job, feel free to tell them about Gatsby. Don't leave this information at the conference. Take it with you. Talk to your engineers. Tell them about headless CMSs, because this small change saved us a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of resources, and that's priceless. And all it took was a little bit of innovation. So let's keep innovating. Thank you.
So we have a lot of time for questions. Is there?
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, thank you.
If we look on Next.js and on Gatsby and look on them without WordPress, why Gatsby better than Next.js? Or
That's a good question. I actually, I'm not quite, I wasn't there when we chose Gatsby. I'm sure we looked into different opportunities. I know we looked into Ghost. By the way, Ghost is a CMS that also has an API. I'm not really quite sure what the pros and cons were with Next. Actually, I'm sorry to throw the question back at you, but do you know of any at the top of your head, just in case you...
one more?
I'm sorry to throw the question back at you, but do you have any suggestions? Like, is there pros and cons to Next.js? I'm not sure myself.
I think no, but maybe Next.js is...
Oh. Good question, by the way. This is a very common question, like why use WordPress? Why use React?
Yeah, it is a really good question because, well, basically, Next.js and Gatsby are for different purposes. Gatsby is good for content that you don't have to change a lot. And Next.js, it will work much slower than a static website anyway, because it have to make a call to the API when to render the page at the moment of the request, and then basically you have a full single-page application when you use Next.js. In case of Gatsby, I think it is just static website.
It is a static website. However, if the content changes a lot, you can still, Gatsby actually really shines there because, for example, our Swipe Life blog, we have 3 WordPress posts a day. And so we update it daily. But yeah, you do have to go through that build process.
Yeah, so basically I think that Gatsby is much faster, but like less powerful than Next.js.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you have any other thoughts, you can add.
Thank you, by the way. We're, by the way, always looking for, we're not stuck on using any particular technology. And so this is really good feedback because we're always, at the end of every year, we want to say, hey, are we still using the best tools out there? So we're always open to changing. Anyway.
You showed us that there is a command Gatsby build that crawls WordPress API for posts.
Yes.
So my question is where those posts are stored after that? I mean, the JSON files or something like this?
That's a very good question. So your WordPress posts, starting at the beginning, your WordPress posts are still inside of your WordPress app. But then when you run Gatsby build, Gatsby will take those posts and it will store them temporarily in a local GraphQL service, which I don't know if it's completely destroyed at the end of the build. I'm sure it sticks around maybe a little bit, maybe in the cache folder. But at the end of the day, your posts that are inside of your React app will be represented inside of small JavaScript and HTML files. They'll be inside of your static website. However, exactly what the representation looks like, I actually don't know. I've never opened up those files to take a look. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
And does anyone else have a better answer, by the way? I'm not really quite sure exactly how the WordPress posts are represented locally. No? OK. I'll take a look at that, though. If you send me an email, I'd be more than happy to answer that more fully.
Hi, I would like
Hey.
to know how easy was it to convince your team lead or anyone responsible for that technical choice really to actually use Gatsby as opposed to React or Next or whatever?
That's a good question. That is a very good question. I wasn't actually a part of the team when they decided to go with Gatsby. However, I can speak to whenever we have new technologies, we take a couple of weeks for an R&D, like research and development, to test out several tools. However, what our process looked like for Gatsby, I don't know if it was an easy sell or not. However, what I can say is our first website was actually the emoji website. And the emoji website was small, it was fast, and it was something that we could just kind of play around with. And after we used Gatsby for that, we had Swipe Life coming down the pipeline. And we realized, oh my God, Gatsby will actually solve this. And then we had another fast static website that came down the pipeline. And we're like, okay, yeah, Gatsby seems to work. So once we chose Gatsby for the smaller website, we kept using it for bigger and bigger and bigger websites as well. But for the first time, I'm not really quite sure how hard it was to convince our staff, you know? We are a smaller dev team, by the way. I think we're now at 8 or 9 web developers. So that's how many people we have to convince. We're still pretty lean. We're pretty nimble.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. By the way, he gave an awesome talk this morning. How many of you saw his talk? Anyone? Yeah? He talked a lot about Gatsby, too. And if you have any answers to any of these questions, feel free to chime in, by the way.
Questions, anybody?
Hi. Do you also manage the navbar or other components on the website, on the WordPress side, or only posts?
That's a good question. Actually, this one might help. The answer is yes. We have several display, non-posty things, I guess, that we control inside of our WordPress. One of them is every category. For example, this says dating tips. If you saw that 98 in accessibility, it's because of this guy. It's the pink background with white text. Anyway, we chose the category colors via WordPress. We have the SEO, our meta tags. That's controlled inside of our WordPress. Our social media links, like Facebook for the English Tinder account versus the France account, that's all inside of WordPress. But yeah, we host... That's my phone. But yeah, we host a lot of things, and you're off. We host a lot of things on WordPress that aren't just posts. Things that maybe our product team would want to change without any developer intervention. Does that make sense?
Questions?
Hi.
Hey.
Is the hook stuff that posts to build system to rebuild the Gatsby, is it
Yes.
pre-built like library, or is it required to make it yourself for your every project?
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Do you have to build the hooks to rebuild your Gatsby site after every you post yourself, or is it
Yes.
already made library?
That's a very good question. So I said we didn't write any PHP. That is a lie. We wrote a few lines of PHP for these webhooks. We wrote them ourselves. And yeah, we had to hook into our publish. There's certain things called, I believe they're called actions. And so our WordPress post edit action, our WordPress post publish action, our WordPress post unpublish action. Those all hooked into, those were all the hooks that we used to hook into these edits. And then we made a post request from there.
To continue his question,
Yeah.
does it collect some publish, for example, you publish 10 posts, does it launch on each post, or it's collect in a pipe and tab published by 10, by 5?
Oh, like does it publish them one by one?
Yeah.
That's a good question. They are not batched. It is one by one. Yes. Which obviously, at a 3-hour build time, that's no bueno. That's not good. However, I want to expound upon that because if you make like 10 edits and you have a build that runs for 3 hours, then your second build will already have all those 10 edits. And so like it's not really 10 builds. It kind of grabs the API as it is in real time. So it'd be 2 builds. Not saying that that's good, but just explaining how the architecture works.
The preview feature that you said you built particularly for this.
Yes.
Is it somewhere on GitHub? Is it open source at all?
No, it's not. Well, I mean, it's not on GitHub. It's one of those things that I think I would like to write some sort of blog article on. But how much can I say?
How does it work?
How does it work? Yeah, I'm not really quite sure if I'm allowed to say is the issue.
Oh, I see.
But if you send me an email, and if anyone who's interested could send me an email, I can get like an answer that I can check by with the team to make sure it's okay. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Kyle.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Working at Tinder, I have to approve like almost every word that I say. Or like a lot of big companies, you know?
Hey, thank you for your talk.
Hey, absolutely.
And the reason of the huge long build is in the Gatsby or in a plugin that works with WordPress?
That's a good question. It's a little bit of both. So Gatsby's build does take a while. Removing Gatsby image, the Gatsby image plugin, like the Gatsby build still probably would take a while. I can't say how long it would take because we've always used Gatsby image from the get-go. However, if you do use Gatsby image as well, which I highly recommend, I'd say for us at least, that was the bloat, that was the big culprit of our large build times was Gatsby image. But if you don't use Gatsby image, you do lose a lot of the power I think that Gatsby gives you. So is it a part of Gatsby? Technically, no, but most people, I'd say, use Gatsby image. Anyway, to answer your question, Gatsby image is probably the bloat. Your build times will still be long without it, or like longer, but it's even extended with Gatsby image, if that makes sense.
Questions?
And also on the new versions of Gatsby, it will parallel those. So it's basically the longer. Is generating your static website longer than generating your images? If so, then that's where the bloat would lie.
Thank you. About coordinating with the marketing team,
yeah.
The timings for the releases of the posts, how do you do it, and how do you have estimate time? Everyone is counting on the delay for the build, or do you have like feature flag or something like this that you can turn on on production, the posts?
Oh, that's a good question. So what we end up doing, I think many WordPress blogs or many blogs in general do this. What we end up doing is having the blog post done way ahead of time and scheduling the publish for a future date. So if we know the build takes 15 minutes, all we have to do is set the publish date to 15 minutes before we actually want it to go live, for example.
Okay, that was a final question. So thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone.